All eyes on the Lone Star State, the ultimate political arena. Can Senator John Cornyn hold off a primary surge from Ken Paxton and Wesley Hunt? And who will emerge from the Crockett-Tallarico showdown? We break down the polls, the players, and the path to victory. This is Battleground Texas.
Welcome, I'm Greg Krugen in Houston. We are 11 days from the start of early voting, and things are getting nasty in the race for U.S. Senate. It's been all-out war on X for the three Republicans in the race, and the big headline from the Democrats is big Super Bowl spending. In the race for Attorney General, Mays Middleton is thanking the Texas Values Action Organization for its endorsement, while Joan Huffman is celebrating the endorsement of Texas Crime Victims United, and Chip Roy just picked up the endorsement of the Austin Police Association. Teaser, my sit-down with Congressman Roy is a little later in this show. All right, let's bring in my colleague Stephen Dial in Dallas and our good friend Houston-based columnist and Baker Institute fellow Bill King. Let's start with the X post that got this latest fight started. Paxton posted, "Cornyn's career is done and everyone knows it. He's stolen 50+ million from races in North Carolina, Maine, Missouri, and Georgia. And what does he have to show for it? He's stuck in the mid-20s, doesn't even know if he'll make the runoff, and is set to lose by huge margins even if he does." Cornyn responded with, "Ken, when this is over, you will have nothing," which turns out to be the same thing you offered to give Angela in divorce proceedings. This after you cheated on her multiple times, end quote.
Now, Wesley Hunt piled on in the hostile exchange, posting, quote, "This petty, unserious messaging is why Texans are walking away from your campaign in droves. It's beneath the office you hold, and it's not the leadership of that our state deserves. March 3rd, there's going to be a political reckoning in Texas."
Of course, things didn't stop there. Responding to a Team Cornyn report about Cornyn winning over Republicans in East Texas, Paxton mocked the boast, writing, quote, "In a shocking announcement, John Cornyn proudly announces he has over 100 supporters after 4 terms in the Senate," end quote.
And to clean things up, Greg, then Cornyn went after Paxton's investigation of Bexar County, alleging the use of taxpayer funds for immigrant legal defense, posting, quote, "Hey, Ken, here's a tip, investigate your own office," referencing an article about grants given to overly, quote, progressive agencies by Paxton's office, Greg.
Okay, Stephen, all I can say is that's a heaping helping of trash talk among the Republicans for Senate. Does it even register with anyone other than guys like you, me, and Bill?
I mean, I think it's starting to be felt amongst the regular voter. Now, granted, yeah, people like us, everyone on this screen, we are already in tune with this. And so some of it is just political gamesmanship. But keep in mind, a lot of people only see social media posts. Voters only see social media posts or what's being put on the news in some circles. And so what they see is how they're going to interpret this race. And what they see is it's getting messy and it could be crowded. I mean, Wesley Hunt is really making waves right now.
All right, Bill, you have been a longtime advocate of civility in political discourse. Clearly, Paxton and Cornyn have not been listening.
Yeah, that ship has sailed, hadn't it? Yeah, I don't think that these things are very effective. The polling shows there's not a lot of undecided in this race. It's all going to be about turnout. And I just have a hard time believing that anybody who reads through that text chain is going to be persuaded to do anything but maybe stay home and not vote for any of them.
All right, let's swing over to the Democrat side of the Senate scramble, where James Tallarico is making more headlines as the target of an attack from Team Cornyn, which posted a picture of Tallarico and what they claim was an on-the-record statement by the Austin State Rep, insisting that, quote, "God is non-binary." I'm guessing that's liable to spark more than a little chatter at Bible studies across the Lone Star State.
Yeah, Greg. Look, I just spoke to SMU political scientist Matthew Wilson, and he was telling me the honeymoon phase may be over with Tallarico, with the Republicans now seeing him as a legitimate threat in November, and so they're attacking him now.
All right, shortly after Tallarico tweeted, we just dropped our Super Bowl ad. If we're going to take on the billionaires that have broken our political system, we need to reach everyone. Here's part of it.
Billionaires don't just influence politicians, they own them. That's why I don't take corporate PAC money. It's why I fought to cap campaign contributions. In the Senate, I'll ban billionaires from making unlimited secret donations.
Okay, going after the evil billionaires on the biggest platform America has to offer. Bill King, Tallarico pledging to be the bringer of transformational change. You think folks are buying what he's selling?
I think it's a smart ad. The University of Texas polling project has shown for some time that corruption by public officials in Texas is the second most important issue after inflation in the economy. And so I think this is a good sweet spot for him to hit. And it's something that when you have, Patrick taking millions of dollars, Patrick taking $1 million right before the Paxton trial, and you see all the money that people that made money off from Uri gave to Abbott. I mean, there is enough there. I think there's something to work with.
All right, Stephen, quickly, lots about Tallarico, not much about Crockett. Where is she?
Yeah, that's the biggest question. And moments ago, I just spoke to her. She talked about those big donors on the Tallarico side, talked about going negative for the first time. I'm sure we'll talk about that soon.
All right, plenty more to cover on Battleground Texas, so stick around. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. This week has been consumed with the Democratic Senate primary candidate, James Tallarico. Not much talk about Jasmine Crockett. I just spoke with her moments ago, responding to a pro-Tallarico attack ad and the Colin Allred video. And some have asked me, so I'll ask you directly. They've seen Tallarico 'Rico' everywhere, and they're saying they're not seeing Jasmine Crockett. Is that intentional?
All right,
Well, I don't know that it's intentional, and I don't know how accurate it is. I think that donors want you to be respectful and smart with their dollars, especially as people are struggling in this economy. And when you've got small dollar donors like I do, $5 and $10, they don't want you just wasting money. And frankly, the reason that Mr. Tallarico has to spend, I think at this point he's probably up to $6 million that he's spent in this primary, is because, like I've told you before, we do have very high name ID as well as branding, and he's attempting to introduce himself to Texans because while he's been elected for a longer amount of time, he's not been at the forefront of these fights, and Texans don't know who he is.
There were rumors that you were going to start an attack ad against Tallarico, but today we saw a pro-Tallarico PAC attacking you, saying, quote, "If she wins, we lose." What is your response to that?
Yeah, isn't that interesting? There were some people that called this out, right? There's a couple of things about this that reek of hypocrisy. Number one, my opponent has kind of spent his entire campaign promoting this idea that he's going after big money in campaigns. Yet we know that he has been signaling, as it was laid out in the New York Times on yesterday, he has been signaling for about a month for those same big guys in dark money to get involved, and they decided to get involved and specifically attack me.
He was visibly angered. What was your response to that, and have you talked to the former congressman since he endorsed you?
Yeah, I actually haven't talked to him on the phone, but just like you talked about the fact that he was angry, this is something we've never seen out of Colin Allred. In fact, I was in D.C. when everything unfolded, and I've spoken to so many of our colleagues that were truly shocked. I've talked to colleagues on the Senate side as well as the House side, and it speaks volumes to the veracity of the claims that were made by the young lady who kind of came forward about this.
Now, that's just part of my conversation with the Dallas Congresswoman. Bill Crockett admitted to me in that interview that this likely could just hurt him with African-American voters. Polls already show that she has huge gains in the head-to-head against Tallarico in the African-American vote. So the question is, will the drama from this week hurt Tallarico with white or Hispanic voters, in your opinion?
Well, I don't think it hurts him with white or Hispanic voters, and she was always going to get the lion's share of the black vote. I don't think there's anything very surprising about that. The question that Tallarico has to grapple with is whether or not he can get moderates to come into the Democratic Party and vote for him, especially white progressives or left-leaning whites. And it looks like he's doing that. And I think by and large it's because of the electability argument. I mean, you look at the polling, he's the one that comes pretty close to beating Paxton. I think the last poll I saw, there was only a point difference between them, which was well within the margin of error. And I think most of the pundits around D.C. and Austin think Tallarico's got a better chance of beating Paxton than the congressman would.
Hey, Greg, a pro-Tallarico PAC posting that ad today, Tallarico spending money for the Super Bowl and just spending money. Crockett told me she's going to start getting up on the airwaves. What do you make of all this?
Look, the best defense is a good offense. Longtime Houston neighborhood activist and grassroots mover and shaker Tamara Bell sounded the alarm here in regard to Crockett, urging the Congresswoman to hit the ground hard all over the state and don't stop talking to anyone willing to listen until the last ballot is cast March 3rd. In other words, she's not seeing the appropriate degree of urgency from the Dallas Democrat, who is just 26 days out from a career make or break primary election. I guess the proof will be in the pudding, Stephen. All right. Still to come on Battleground Texas, one-on-one with the frontrunner in the Republican primary to succeed Ken Paxton as State Attorney General. Welcome back. The Republican primary to succeed Ken Paxton as top cop in Texas has been a four-way turf war cage fight for months. As we enter the stretch run to Election Day, the verbal combat is only intensifying. Enter front-running Congressman Chip Roy, who claims that after all the sound and fury, he's in position to send the field packing on March 3rd without a runoff.
My family came here in the 1850s. My great-great-grandfather was a Texas Ranger. My grandfather was a police chief out in Sweetwater. I served as a federal prosecutor, worked with law enforcement, and this is coming home. It's my first legal job was in the Office of Attorney General in the Prosecutor's Assistance Division. I served as the first Assistant Attorney General, and this is a particular important time for Texas. And after 4 terms in Congress, you know, look, term limits are kind of an arbitrary thing, but I do think you should go and then come back. I think it's a representative form of government. I've had my time up there.
All right, Congressman Chip Roy exuding plenty of confidence there. Stephen, you think it's justified?
Yeah, I mean, you know, voters want to see a candidate that is confident. So regardless if you think you're leading or you're not leading, you need to show confidence. And enter Wesley Hunt in the Senate chat. You know, he has been pushing this narrative that he is in this race. And now look, according to some polls, he's in this race. Now, with Chip Roy, I mean, he already is kind of seen as a front runner. It's still a question of will a Trump endorsement of one of the other candidates impact him? But I think Roy is the front runner. It's a matter of will there be a runoff?
All right, Bill, with the exception of Joan Huffman, the Republican field in this race appears to be in some kind of competition to see who can crack down on so-called Islamification the hardest. Roy believes the threat is real, and apparently lots of folks within the GOP base do as well. Your thoughts?
Well, all I can tell you, in the 70 or so issues in the UT polling, Islamification does not appear on anybody's radar screen. So if it's a concern, it's a very narrow concern. Like, I think that the question here is whether or not he's going to win this without a runoff. And I think that Middleton attacking him the way that he is indicates that Middleton's polling must indicate there's a real risk of that.
All right, Stephen. Roy lashed out at Mays Middleton in that interview, suggesting his multi-million-dollar campaign hasn't gained any traction. But I strongly suspect the poll numbers have changed since the absolute barrage of MAGA Mays ads that have aired in every market in Texas. Agree, disagree?
Agree. I mean, the last time you, Rudy, and I talked about this, that polling was before this media blitz. I mean, if people did not know who Mays Middleton was, they know MAGA Mays now. At the very least, that doesn't mean they're going to vote for him, but they know MAGA Mays because other than Chip Roy ads, you hear MAGA Mays Middleton. So again, I go back to will President Trump jump into this race? Middleton's spending a ton of money right now.
All right, Bill, Joan Huffman and Aaron Reitz don't seem to have the resources to compete dollar for dollar in the stretch run arms race, although Huffman is the only woman in the field, and that can make her a default choice for, you know, maybe half the Republican electorate. Agree, disagree?
Well, Joan is very popular with the Republican women groups, and her background in law enforcement, again, she's done very well with law enforcement. I think there's an outside chance she could slip in. The problem when you have someone like Middleton and Chip Roy going after each other, sometimes people say, I don't really like either one of those people, and they look for somebody else on the ballot to vote for. And the fact that she's a woman is significant. Women have a 2 or 3 point advantage in most races in Texas.
All right, Stephen, you're up there in Dallas on the issue of Sharia law. And, you know, all of these candidates, with the exception of Huffman, hitting it. Is it resonating with Republican voters up there?
Well, see, we have to look at things in context, right? So we know that primary voters are the reddest of the red and the bluest of the blue traditionally. And so that talking point may be good in the primary. I just don't see that being a November conversation like Bill mentioned. Like, that's not a top topic for voters, and yet we see money being spent on it. So maybe they know something we don't know.
Yeah, Bill, you've called that a deflection because the Republicans are so underwater on so many other issues.
Well, the Republicans have been very good at using sort of wedge issues in the past to get past some of the things that Texans don't like about the way they're running the state. I mean, Texans don't like our abortion law, especially not having a an exception for rape and incest. They don't like the THC stuff. They didn't like the redistricting. And so if you can move the conversation past that to some sort of boogeyman, that there's somebody coming to get you, then that's a way to deflect that.
All right. All right, okay, stay with us. Plenty more worthy of discussion unfolding all over Battleground Texas.
And welcome back. One of the races that I'm looking at is, Greg, still because Colin Allred has been talked about this week, it's weird because he's being talked about in the Senate race, but he's running a congressional race. And some have said that they think that his ads are just the ads that were the Senate ad and just changing the out on it. I'm really interested to see how close this race actually is, or is it not close? And we don't have any really detailed polling on it, but that is a race I'm definitely looking at here in North Texas. What's on your mind?
All right, Stephen, I don't know about you, but my inbox has been flooded with official press releases from incumbent Ag Commissioner Sid Miller, who is facing a big-time primary challenge from honey magnate Nate Sheets. Full disclosure, being an unapologetic addict of all things beef, one of Miller's proposals struck pay dirt with me as a great idea, the so-called heifer tax break. Let me explain. Miller says his plan emulates the child tax credit, except for mama cows. Ranchers would get a credit on their federal taxes for keeping their heifers to reproduce instead of dispatching that potential breeding stock to the slaughterhouse to cash in on high prices. Now, with the nation's cattle herd having fallen to its lowest level in a half century, Miller calls the heifer tax credit critical conservation necessary to keep the ribeyes rolling onto Gru's grill. And let me tell you, I'm all for that. All right, that's all the time we have. You can see the interview or any of our past interviews by going to our YouTube pages. And keep the conversation going on social media.
All right, TGIF. On Friday, we hear from the man that Governor Abbott endorsed over Ag Commissioner Sid Miller. We'll see you tomorrow on Battleground Texas.